So, Mark, thanks to be here.
Sure.
So, your previous book, The Subtle Art of Not Giving a Fuck, had been now on New York Times list for 130 weeks, and it sold more than 8 million copies around the world. It's a huge success. How did you feel that impacted in how you work nowadays? How do you work nowadays?
It's interesting. That's an interesting question. I feel like, well, first of all, it put more pressure.
Yeah, I can imagine, because we are never be prepared for success.
Yes.
Always for failure.
Yes. So, you know, with the new book, there was a lot of pressure that I put on myself. I think a lot of it is just, I learned a lot of writing, or I think any kind of creative career path is a lot of it's like understanding yourself. So it wasn't until about halfway through Subtle Art, writing Subtle Art, that I started to understand my own, the way my own brain works. You know, my writing habits that are good for me, work habits that are good for me, what time of the day is best for me, how many hours at a time, how to block out distractions and stuff like that. So it was...
Especially Zelda.
Yes. Oh yeah. So it was, I think that was the biggest thing, was that coming into this second book, I felt like I had a better understanding of like how my own mind kind of creates, and then adapting my work habits to fit my mind, rather than like, I think what most people do is they just like, they read something online, they're like, that's what I have to do, and then they like,
yeah,
you know, torture themselves because they don't get up at 5 a.m. or whatever. Yeah. You know?
Yeah. Okay, but it's so much harder to get motivated after to get until this peak.
Yeah, you know, it was interesting after the book was so successful that I went through about a year where I didn't know what to do, and it's obviously that level of success is amazing.
Yeah,
wouldn't take any of it back.
First world problem.
Very much first world problem, like zero world problem. You know? But it's a strange experience when you work for like 10 years towards some goals, and then when you achieve all those goals very quickly, like all at once, you don't know what to do next. And so it took me about a year to kind of like figure out why I need to write, why I want to write, what I want to write about. Because once you're selling that many books, you can write about whatever you want. You don't need more money. You don't need to like. So, you know, what do I want to write about? Why am I a writer? What do I care about? It kind of actually brought, in a strange way, it brought a little bit of an identity crisis to me, which is, it's strange when I tell people that like success can cause an identity crisis, but it absolutely can. So.
And another subject, how much are you involved with the marketing of your own work? Because I realized that you are not exactly a frequent content creator for social media platforms. And it seems like that is the rule of nowadays, how everybody works. And why did you choose this opposite way?
Yeah.
And in spite of that, you are this huge success. What do you think?
I think one thing that's very underrated, especially in internet business, is the value of letting people want more. I would much rather have my followers and readers wish they had more of my stuff than feel like they have too much. That's not to say that it's like that's the whole strategy, but you know, it's a lot. Social media marketing doesn't come natural to me. It doesn't often feel good to me. It doesn't feel like it fits the brand well. And when I think about my favorite artists, musicians, or whoever, my favorite writers, they'll disappear for 5 years. And then when they show up, like, I am so excited that they showed up, you know? So I think there's an understated value of just not putting anything.
Well, it's like there's a lot of ways to get on the same thing. Like,
Yeah.
Like Gary Vee posted 24 hours per day.
Oh, yeah. And I think he's a good example because I followed Gary Vee for a long time, and then when he kind of started posting constantly, like tons of content every single, I stopped following because it was just too much, you know. And I got
boring.
I got kind of sick of it, and it's one of those things too where it's like, well, I don't need to watch every day. I can just watch once a month and probably hear, because he's saying a lot of the same stuff every day, you know. So there's no urgency in terms of like, oh, I need to see more Gary Vee. So I think there's a weird. I think the question of how much content to produce and post is more complicated than it's often discussed, and that there's advantages to go inside sometimes.
One of the main components of your book is that you need to develop a sense of values. Can you talk a little bit about it?
Sure. Values are very much the focal point of my work because my argument is basically that, like, if you don't have your values correct, nothing else really matters, you know. So let's say if you value something that's very unhealthy or very damaging, or like let's say, I don't know, you become obsessed with like owning a boat or something, you know, it's just something very superficial. You can work all day, you can have amazing discipline, you can be super efficient, but if the thing that's motivating you is unhealthy, then all of that hard work and effort is going to hurt you. And so you actually become your own enemy. And so I try to get people, so much of the life advice in the world is about how to be successful, and I try to take a step back and ask, how are you defining success? And should you define success? Because success is a complicated question. And depending on how you answer that question, it's going to affect a lot of what you do, how you feel.
And how you used to do this pursuit inside of yourself? Mm-hmm. What's the questions that you make to yourself?
I just try to be very skeptical of myself. I have a little bit of a Buddhist background, that's very much encouraged in Buddhism, of like, if you have a feeling, instead of indulging that feeling, ask why you have that feeling. Should you have that feeling? Is that feeling real? Same thing with thoughts or beliefs. Like, should you think that? You know, is selling 8 million books a good thing? I don't know. You could probably make an argument that in some cases it's not. You know, like if you really wanted to. So from an early age, I kind of developed a habit of asking these questions. And I think I've found that incredibly important in my own life. To always evaluate what direction I'm facing. So, yeah, and it's a habit I recommend for others.
Sounds great. So, everything spoke a book about hope. In the beginning of the book, you wrote about a guy called Witold Pilecki. I don't know if it is the pronunciation.
Witold Pilecki.
Witold Pilecki. And there's a quote: "I try to live my life in a way that on the moment of my death, I could feel joy instead of fear." The quote of this Polish war hero who fought against the Soviets and Nazis, and yet never lost his hope, is something achievable to keep our hopes no matter what.
I think so. I mean, the thing that's amazing about Pilecki, and the reason I put him at the beginning of the book, is to show that hope and motivation is purely internal. Like there's nothing in the world that can be so bad that you can't still be motivated and still do something, you know? And I think out of all the stories I've ever come across, his is the most incredible in terms of like how bad things were around him and how he was never once did he stop doing the right thing. It's incredible. It's like the most heroic thing I've ever seen in my life.
Incredible. How has a failure or apparent failure set up you for a later success? Do you have a favorite failure of yours?
Well, it's funny because before we started recording, you were asking me about product launches on my website. And that's a good example because, you know, years and years ago, say like 2011 to 2014, I tried to launch a number of, like do a bunch of big product launches and, you know, build up a bunch of marketing and stuff. And none of them did well. I mean, they made some money, but like for how big my audience was,
are below the expectation.
Way below the expectation. And I remember getting like really upset and being like, am I bad at marketing? Like, am I just bad at this? You know? And then I went and hired somebody to help me and it still did bad. You know, and at a certain point, what it taught me is that my brand and my audience, my relationship with my readers is different than most platforms and most audiences. It's my relationship with them is different. Therefore, like I have to approach them in a different way. And so I had to kind of create a solution for myself, which is the subscription model that's on my site. And it's that is like 4 times more successful than anything I ever launched before. So that's a good example, just in pure business terms, like that's a good example of just like, for 3 years I tried doing what most people do, and it kept not working, and then I was like, okay, let me think about what should work based on what I know about myself and my audience.
Okay. What is one of the best or most worthwhile investments that you ever made? It could be investment of money, time, energy, whatever.
I spent a number of years traveling. As soon as I got to the point where my online business was making enough money for me to live,
you travel around the world.
I started traveling around the world. And it's funny because
and you found your wife.
I did find my wife here in Brazil, actually. Yeah. And but it's funny because at the time, a lot of my friends in the United States, you know, they had corporate jobs and careers and they were getting promotions and they thought I was crazy. But it's looking back, the amount I learned just from living in all these different places and cultures and studying different languages. It's one of the best decisions I ever made. Like it's just, in terms of speaking in terms of investments, like it's paying dividends every year of my life. It pays huge dividends because I understand where different people from different parts of the world are coming from culturally and emotionally, and why certain things happen a certain way in the United States and not in Europe, or why they happen this way in Brazil and not in Asia, you know, and it's just, it's such a gift, for sure.
Really cool. What advice could you give for a writer that just starts and want to make this a full-time job?
It's hard. I think one thing, and this is true for any creative career, but definitely true with writing, I think initially you just have to plan that the first couple of years you're not going to make it. Like, that is the, you know, how good you are aside, like that's the big hurdle for most people. There are tons of really good writers in the world, but there are very few people that are willing to write for 2-3 years consistently and not make a dollar, to build the reputation and the credibility and the brand and the platform and everything to get to the point where they can start making money. So it's for that reason I always tell people, like, don't wait, just sign up for a Medium account or whatever, and just start publishing today, right now. Like, there's no downside, only upside, and because it's, no matter who you are, it's going to take a long time.
Yeah, because it seems like that you are an overnight success, but we know that I follow you since 2010. I think that you started in 2007.
Yep. So it's actually very funny because in the publishing world,
for the mainstream audience.
Yeah, I'm like a big debut author, and I'm like, man, I've been doing this 12 years.
Yeah. So when you feel overwhelmed or unfocused or have temporarily, what do you do to get back on the trail?
For me, it's funny actually. I remember when I was writing the new book, sometimes I would rent a room at a co-working space nearby, because I just needed to get out of needed to get out of my house, get away from, I needed to go somewhere where people couldn't find me. And I remember one day, the manager of the co-working space came by, and he's like, how are things going? I'm like, oh, they're great. And he said, oh, are you feeling inspired? And he kept asking me that, which I think a lot of people think writers must, you get inspired one day. And I told him, I was like, look, there's no such thing as inspiration. There's only a lack of distraction. At least for me, that's true. I told him, I was like, inspiration is a lack of distraction. If I'm left alone with nothing to occupy me, my brain will just start coming up with cool stuff. The hard part is getting myself to that place where there's nothing pulling me away. So,
very nice. So, do you have some next 5-year plans or something, or you think about your life in 1 year? How do you see yourself in 5 years ahead?
So I do create little 5-year goals for myself every 3 to 5 years, but I don't take them that seriously, just because I understand that I'm going to change so much as I go through the years that generally, in my experience, 50% of any goal that I set for myself, when I start working on it, I realize I don't actually want that goal. What I learned by setting the goal is that that's not the correct goal. I need this other thing is the correct goal.
It's a way to know yourself.
Yes. So I do think about those questions, but I use them as a kind of more of an introspective tool than an actual I need to do ABC by the time I'm 40. In terms of right now, so I'm 35 right now, and I'm 40. I mean, I've got contracts for 2 more books in the next, I think, 3 years, 4 years that I have to do. And I think that's all I'm really focusing on. I think, I actually don't know what's going to happen. So.
Okay. And your next book is going to be Will Smith's biography?
Yeah. Yeah, his memoir. We started writing that in April. And so it's still pretty early in the process, but it's pretty exciting.
Okay. Thank you very much, Mark. It's awesome to talk with you.
Yeah.
I'm a huge fan of your work, and I hope everybody gets a lot of value of the interview.
Muito obrigado.